Welcome to the instructional installation video for the metal transmission boost box for your ARRMA vehicle. For information on compatible ARRMA vehicles, check out the description below. In your boost box you will find a decal sheet and an instructional sheet to link you back to this video. You will have a pre-assembled preset metal geared slipper clutch, 2 fully metal input gears, and an optional spline strengthening ring. The first thing to do to begin this installation is to remove the body shell from your vehicle. Then remove all 4 wheels and tyres. Next we're going to remove the centre drive shaft of the vehicle, pull it towards the front of the vehicle, pull upwards and then release from the front. Then remove the power module retaining screw from the underside of the vehicle. And then pull on the battery strap to remove the block. Pull on the tabs and then release the motor and power module forwards. If this is a little bit tight, then wiggle the power module and repeat the process until the module becomes loose. Next we want to disconnect the motor wires and the fan wire. Set the power module to one side. We'll be installing the slipper clutch later on. Next we'll be installing the input gear. In the front, first of all, we're going to remove the lower shock mount screws in the outer camber link screw. The lower shock mount screws have the washers. Keep the washers and the screws together so you know which one goes back on the lower shock mount. Next we need to remove the upper bulkhead. This is done by 4 screws on the underside of the chassis as shown here. With the screws removed, you'll be able to split the upper bulkhead from the chassis, also pop off the camber link, and then you'll get access to the diff yoke. Remove the yoke from the chassis, disconnect the drive shafts. Now we can start work on the diff yoke to replace the plastic input gear with the all-metal input gear. Firstly, pay attention to the orientation on the diff. The gear side is the opposite side to what we want to work on. We want to remove the drive shaft from the side that is opposite the diff gear. Check that your driver has enough reach to get down the drive shaft and unscrew the screw that leads into the diff. With the drive shaft removed, we can now split the diff yoke and get access to the input gear. 2 screws from either side is all that's required to open the diff yoke. Remove the yoke from the side that is opposite the diff gear, and this will expose the input gear. Remove the input gear and then remove the 2 bearings from the input gear. We will reinstall these bearings onto the metal input gear included in your boost box. Install them so there's a small gap between them and put them back into the diff yoke. The bearings will sit in place. Make sure the teeth have grease on them. If there's not enough grease on the teeth already, then apply a little bit more gear grease. Now we can close the diff yoke and screw it back together. Reinstalling the same 2 screws we removed from before. Now we're going to reinstall the drive shaft. For extra security, use a bit of thread lock on the screw. Ensure the splines are aligned. Push the drive shaft onto the spline and then tighten the screw. The metal input gear is now installed in the front diff yoke. We can start to reinstall it back into the car. Reinstalling in a similar way to how we removed it. Reconnect the drive shafts, aligning the splines, install the diff yoke in between the upper bulkhead and the chassis, making sure that the drive shafts are free, the shocks are clear, and then we can close the upper bulkhead onto the chassis, checking that everything is aligned. Now we can reinstall the 4 lower screws to secure the upper bulkhead. Now we will reconnect the outer camber link with the screw we removed from before. And then reconnect the lower shock screws. These are the ones with the washers. That is going to complete the front input gear installation. We'll repeat almost the exact same process at the rear, starting by removing the lower shock mounts. As before, these are the screws with the washers. And again, we're going to remove one of the upper outer camber links. Flipping to the underside of the vehicle, this time we're going to remove 3 of the lower screws to remove the upper bulkhead. Repeating a similar process to the front end, split the upper bulkhead from the chassis, which will allow you to get access to the diff yoke assembly. For the rear input gear installation, we follow the exact same process as we did in the front diff. Remove the drive shaft opposite the diff gear, split the yoke with the 2 screws. Once you have the yoke split, you can install the metal input gear. Reinstalling the bearings and installing exactly how we did on the front diff yoke assembly. In a similar process to what we did with the front end, reinstall the diff yoke into the vehicle, connecting the drive shafts, placing it into the chassis and closing the upper bulkhead. Just be sure to clear any camber links and shocks from the drive shaft before you close the upper bulkhead. Now we can reinstall the upper bulkhead screws. 3 screws from the underside of the chassis as we removed from before. Now we can reconnect the upper outer camber link. Make sure the drive shaft is connected and then install the camber link and install the screw we removed earlier. Now we can reinstall the lower shock mount screws. These are the screws with the washers. Reinstall them as we removed them before. With that done, we can set the car to one side and we're going to work on the power module now. To install the pre-assembled metal gear slipper clutch, we need to split the power module, 3 screws as shown here. And then you can pull on the tab to split the power module open. And then you can remove your stock slipper clutch and put that to one side. Your metal gear slipper clutch does come with bearings pre-installed. Check in the half to see if there's a bearing left there already. If it has, remove the bearing, store it to one side and use the new bearings that are provided in your metal gear slipper clutch. Simply insert it with the longest end through the power module and then close the power module. Reinstall the 3 screws you removed before. Your metal gear slipper clutch is now installed in the power module. Let's get it back in the vehicle. Lay the power module in the vehicle and then we're going to reconnect the motor wires before we install it. So rotate the vehicle, connecting colour to colour, and also remember to connect the fan wire as well. Included in your boost box is the optional retaining sleeve to strengthen the rear spline output. If you want to use this, install it over the rear spline before you connect it to the transmission. Pay special attention to make sure it's in place as you insert the power module. Installing the power module into the spline output can be a little bit tricky. Rotate the drive shafts or the slipper clutch to ensure the splines are aligned. Once they are aligned, the power module will click back into place. To finish off this installation, we're going to reconnect the block in front of the power module by sliding it from the side and inwards, and then reinstall the screw from the lower side of the vehicle. and then reinstall the center drive shaft. Front first, compressing the drive shaft and then installing the rear. And then reinstall all of the wheels and tyres onto your vehicle. This will complete your metal transmission boost box installation. For more information on other boost boxes, check out the links in the description below.